Hey everyone, it's Chris Bello with Chris Bello Real Estate. And today I've got Jen or Jennifer Hernandez with me. Welcome to the interview.
Hey, Chris. Thank you.
It's interesting talking to you on this side because I know we've been doing Friday Mastermind. So now it's just you and I talking about lending and the good, bad, and ugly of loans. So that was a good title for this. So
Awesome.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick for anyone who's tuning in? And for those tuning in, be sure to drop comments, questions, and stuff. We'll be checking the live feed. But yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Jennifer Hughes Hernandez. I'm Hernandez by marriage, but I am fluent in Spanish. The whole other long story how I met my husband, exchange student in Mexico when I was in college. A&M. We both went to A&M.
Wow. I didn't know about this.
I'm a little older than you, Chris, but I went to A&M. So I started in mortgage about a year after I'd graduated. I was just stuck. You know, I was waiting tables. Obviously, I just had this midlife crisis at 24 and was like, I got to do something. And a friend had a mortgage company and said, hey, come be 100% commission loan officer. I'm like, you are nuts. What? No, I got student loans and car payment. There's no way. But I did it and I never looked back. So that was 25 years ago. Wow. And I'll hit 4,000 loans this year, originated. So that's been amazing. Super fun. I've got a team of, we're 7 right now and we're about to be 8. So I'm hiring. And who would know that my best year ever was going to be during COVID?
I know, right?
Super exciting. It's, we're blessed to have lots of people that we can help. But I love to originate mortgage loans. I still work very closely with the clients. Majority of my business is from realtors. Let's say like 65% from realtors, and then past clients and friends. So we don't advertise. We just get lots of referrals that we love to help, however many of them we can help. So
awesome. And then for those listening as well, I've gotten inspired from a lot of your processes, and I'll ask questions sometimes like, okay, so you do this, you spend 90 minutes on phone calls or giving follow-ups because I'd like to implement similar things in my business. And here's my kitty saying hello to everyone.
Yeah, that's what I love what a good student you are and how directed you are. And that's something that I know will never stop for you, even when you're, my age, right? When you're 20 years down in your career. And it's been refreshing for me to be on the mastermind. It's the mastermind leadership book club that we do, because you've actually helped just reinvigorate a lot of really good ideas from a younger generation into us old school.
I appreciate that. And I actually met up with Fabian, after the fact, because he was curious on how I do my social media stuff and the Calendly and the Zoom calls, all these different tools that we can use. And I know I was actually on a call with 2 other pretty new realtors and giving them some of my tips so that they could shortcut, because I know there is a little bit of that gap between how it always has been done and how it can be done. And I'm kind of trying to figure out the shortcuts, because I recently heard from another interview of someone in this group, Kevin Wood. He said that, I think someone at Google said this, that Google likes to hire lazy people because engineers and lazy people, they want to solve the problem just once and have it go away. Versus having to hit the same problem over and over again. So just wanted to give you a quick shout out as well, because you have really good processes and documentation and a lot of things that you do. I'm like, ooh, that's a good idea. Let me do that for my
I want my friends to plagiarize. It's like, why, if you can get there faster, right, and with less pain, why would you not do it? So I'm part of this coaching group for top lenders and realtors called The Core, and we just plagiarize each other all the time. We're like, I'm copying that from him. I mean, we're sharing, and it's really fun.
What I hear is people say, borrow, don't steal, that kind of thing. Like maybe just take the ideas. You don't want to just copy paste the words exactly, but
yes, we do. In the Core, we give each other permission to do that. It's like,
that's amazing.
Here's my script. Just say this thing. Just say this.
Yeah.
It works. But you know what I mean? Like, we're sharing each other's stuff.
That's the best. And I have friends who are like that as well, where I don't mind sharing. If I find something awesome, I want to share it with people. And I don't mind if it's a shortcut that took me forever to figure out. But yeah, I just wanted to give that quick intro. So thank you for jumping on this call. We did have some questions, and let me see if anyone is joining us yet. Let me type in here real quick. Please drop any questions below about lending. Cool. And actually, I had a question that came up in this group. Let me see if I can find it, because that's what I had reached out to you for. So maybe we can start off with that, if that's okay.
This is your investor group, right?
This is my investor group. Yeah. So this is my Houston Real Estate Investors Group. The idea is to just answer questions for people who've been on the fence. They know they want to invest in real estate. Maybe they have one rental property. And sorry for my cat. It's just crazy in the background. I hope that's not distracting. She's just like spinning in circles and chasing her tail. But his question was, I'm looking for recommendations for a lender able to do a 90% LTV HELOC on a primary residence in Houston, Texas. And you told me it wasn't doable.
HELOCs. Yeah, HELOCs in tech, and this was his primary residence, right?
Yes.
So HELOCs, so the finance code in Texas prohibits cash out, taking equity out of your value up to 80% loan to value. So that's like not a Jennifer thing. That's like a Texas finance code. I mean, it's against the law pretty much. So there's no lender. Now in other states, they do all kinds of crazy stuff. Like California, they go up to like 125% because of the appreciation. But Texas, you can't do that. You can go up to 80.
Okay.
So yeah.
Good to know.
No cash outs. No cash above 80.
Awesome. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions coming in real time, but otherwise, I guess we could just start talking about lending and real estate investors. I know you said you work with investors. If someone wants to buy a property and they've never bought a property, can we maybe have that conversation of what does their credit score need to look like? What can they do to get ready for that?
Sure. I also have on my YouTube channel, Alone with Jen, I have a video about this very topic. I'll send it to you so that you can post it in the feed. But so the basics of the loans that I do, so I do the loans that are conventional conforming loans, which means they conform to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines. So it's definitely not the only way that investors purchase property, but if they're looking for a long-term 30-year fixed low interest rate, this is the kind of loan that I'm talking about. If you're flipping, go to hard money, private money. That's not what this
is. It's a totally different
it would be
business
for.
Model. Yeah.
So for the long-term financing, when you're going to hold property, the basics to know right now, the minimum is 20% down. In the past, it was 15, but with COVID, there's been restrictions. So 20% down, I can tell you that the rates are much better with 25. So I've been telling investors, listen, you're going to pay you're going to pay like 2 to 3 points for putting 20% down. Better to spend that money on principal than waste it on a bunch of points. So that's one thing. 20 to 25 is preferable. The other thing that you need to watch out for qualifying, that the credit score is just crucial. If your credit score isn't above 740, you get hammered. I don't know how to say it other than that, is you get hammered on the rate. Above 740 is the best. And the biggest thing to watch out for is that mortgage companies have to all use the same algorithm of credit. We all use the same formula of FICO. So when clients call me and they say, oh yeah, I know my FICO score, it's 700 or 720. That's normally not what we pull. So there's over 25 models of FICO, and, Equifax and Credit Karma and your credit card giving you this free value service. I don't know what formula they're using. All I know is that all mortgage lenders, to sell a loan to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, we have to use the same credit score. So that's how we can sell the loan between each other, because it's all conforms to a similar criteria.
Okay.
So just be careful. It's important to talk to a mortgage lender and let them pull your credit as soon as you can, because that's the key to knowing what your credit score is. I call it a mortgage credit score. There's really no such
More
thing.
accurate.
It's a term that I've made of just a mortgage company pulled credit score. So credit definitely, minimum is 700 on investment, but ideal is 740. The other thing we look at that's really super important is reserves. So when you're buying your first property, it's not a big deal because you don't have that many properties yet, but we need 6 months PITIA, Principal Interest Taxes Insurance Association, on all the properties that you have financed, even if they're with private money, times 6 months. So that includes your homestead, it includes your rental. So when you only have 2 properties, it's not that big. But as you amass 4, 5, 6 properties that are financed, PITIA adds up on all those properties. So if all of your payments together are $4,000, that's $24,000 that's needed in reserves somewhere. And reserves is some type of a liquid. It can be retirement account, but it can't be equity in a property. So we need money sitting somewhere that's yours, that's verifiable. Like it could be cash value in an insurance policy, like life insurance. It could be 401k. It could be a money market, stock, mutual funds, whatever, but it has to be pretty accessible. Like you can liquidate it pretty quickly. Equity in a house, you can't liquidate very quickly. I mean, these days you can if you live in Houston, but you know what I mean? So that's really important because that's the number one factor that we probably see disqualify people from conventional loans is they start amassing these properties and I'm like, hey, I need you to have reserves. And they're like, huh? What are you talking about? All my money is in my property. And I'm like, we got to have reserves. So those criteria are really the most important, down payment, credit score, and of course the reserve requirement. What I find is a lot of the people that it's their first one, they usually have a pretty good day job. I see a common pattern. Usually it's like an engineer or, someone that's got a really nice salary. I just see certain common denominators. A lot of times it's, people that are single, not always, but
right.
We see people that have their day jobs. So
yeah, I agree with that because I know a lot of people who have those great jobs. I interviewed a friend on here who's got 30 plus rentals, young engineer, been working there for years, was willing to travel and all of that. Another guy actually, young medical sales rep, was willing to move abroad or not abroad, but into another state to work, and very flexible. They like to take some risks and really move forward quickly. And I guess in those scenarios where they're able to stash away reserves fairly quickly, because it's crazy to see if you look at oil and gas jobs and engineering jobs and energy. I remember I got an offer in oil and gas. All my other offers from regular companies were like half. So I could just save so much faster. So I totally understand why people they don't know what to do with the money. They want to invest it. Why not get a property?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, it's a great investment. We just need to, for the long-term stuff, we just need to meet that, that criteria for the buy and hold stuff if you're going to do the Fannie Mae type loan. So
right. So you have a lot of investors that are buying their first property, you said. Are they planning on living in it? Or?
I run across quite a few. I mean, I've got others that it's their 3rd, 4th, 5th property. We can go up to 10 on the Fannie Mae stuff. Outside of that, there's some other lenders nationwide that are doing it. I mean, I know there's definitely a market for it. I just don't do those loans. Mm-hmm. So I hear investors talk a lot about, I know what non-QM is, but I don't know if the people on the live podcast do. So there's the stuff that I do is QM, qualified mortgage. So back in 2008, when the big bubble, everything burst in the financial markets, there became a distinction between mortgages that qualified to a certain criteria for debt to income ratio, certain guidelines. That's a qualified mortgage. So, and then that's the stuff that I do. The non-qualified mortgage is stuff that doesn't adhere to those guidelines. And so it has to be specified as a non-QM loan. It's not a qualified mortgage, it's something else. So it's like it's a bucket. Like think of it as a barrel, a bucket, and it's all those loans are over here. And that stuff is not sold with the mortgage bonds on the secondary market. It's probably some private pool of investment. So there's lenders that do that really well, and there's investors that look for non-QM loans. And that's when you hear, like when you hear stuff about, oh, bank statement program or stated income or asset-based loan, like they're only going to look at the assets of my 50 rental properties. They're just going to look at all my leases. They're not going to look at my tax returns. That's that non-QM hybrid weird stuff that's over here.
Okay. So that's what some of those other national companies do.
There's a few, and there's some local ones probably too, but those are the more hybrid type lenders where they just do that. And so the stuff that I'm talking about is the QM, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, just the vanilla stuff over here. Okay. That's got the lowest interest rate that everybody wants.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Cool. So in terms of if someone's interested in getting a home, I always tell people the first step really is, other than defining the criteria in the area, talking to a lender and making sure they can qualify and that they have that pre-approval or pre-qualification letter. So that way, when we look at houses and they want to make offers, we don't have to start that process. It's already done. Is that kind of what you typically advise your clients as well?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And so let's talk really quick, if you don't mind. You mentioned pre-qualification versus pre-approval. So there is a big difference. So yeah. Pre-qual means pretty much that you're breathing and you have a credit score. Like that's it. That we've just taken a verbal conversation. Like let's say you and I spent 20 minutes and I'm asking you different things and I'm, filling in your application and I've pulled your credit and your credit's a green light. That's a pre-qualification. The pre-approval, which is what you really want when before you show a client or start to look at houses, is that we've actually gathered your documents. Like, oh, okay, Chris, great. Credit score is a green light. Now let's see your 2 years tax returns. If you're self-employed, we need 2 years tax returns or your 2 years W-2s. Let's look at your bank statements, verify those reserves. Like, let's get the meat behind what you've told me verbally, so that we can make sure that on paper, everything jives with what our guidelines are, the criteria for the underwriting. So the pre-approval is the more solid one. Pre-qualification means you just talk to me verbally and I pulled your credit. That's all that means.
Okay, cool. Good to know. I always confuse those two. I was like, because qualified sounds like it's legit. Like, oh, that sounds like it could be the better one, but approval is the one that you actually...
Approval's legit, yeah.
Good to know. Good to know. So the pre-approval, how long does that typically take? Because even when I connect my clients with lenders, I can't remember when I did mine a few years ago, 4 years ago at this point. I know it's a lot of documents. They got to get pay stubs and all of that. Do you have an estimated time on how long that should take for someone who's looking to do that?
So from the time that we receive their documents, it really is a business day. It's a 24-hour turn, I want to say right now. I can sometimes in the past I could do it quicker, but just a business day to look at the documents, run the ratios, do all the diligence from the time we receive their documents. So it's the ball's in their court to get us stuff. Now, many times, so I personally always talk to clients immediately within 4 to 5 business hours of them applying. We get them on the calendar. But there's about 30% of the clients that need extra verification. Like, you know what? You're hourly and you get overtime or bonus. I really need to go to your employer and get verification of employment. Like it's not as clear cut on the pay stub, or I need another year of taxes. You only gave me 1 year. Or so if there's things missing, it'll take longer. So it depends, but most people, if they get you what you ask for and it's straightforward what you thought, it should be, in my opinion, it should be 1 business day to get that done. But some companies are longer because they're understaffed or have too many clients, or
they don't have the
process, or they're disorganized. Yeah, they're disorganized. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, The hardest part for me so far, especially with multiple deals, is just staying organized with all the little checklists and deadlines. And was this check delivered? Did you do this? Was this thing signed? So if you have your stuff together like you guys do, another kudos, because that's how you don't miss things, and you don't get surprised when closing's not happening on time. I've had some bad lenders that I've dealt with on other sides of the transactions, and yeah, I think
It's
even recently.
it's very easy to be disorganized, and it's excruciatingly painful. Like, I'm glad I'm doing a good job of making it look easy, because it
It's a
actually
lot.
is it's really hard. Yeah. And we've got to hold everyone accountable, make sure everyone on the team is following the process. And
Yeah.
whether your team is 1 or your team is 7, you've got to make sure that things are tight,
Absolutely. And you trust your people. I know you said you definitely trust the people that work with you, and they sometimes take your phone and respond to stuff for you. I was like, oh, I don't know if I could trust people
Oh,
to
yeah.
text my clients. What would they say?
Oh, yes, you can. It's called hand them the phone, and she's sitting right here. And I'm like, okay, text Chris,
That's
text
awesome.
Daryl, and she's texting on my behalf, and she does it better than me. She's like putting smiley faces, and she's like, oh yeah. I'm like, this is Mecca
That
right
is
here.
amazing. That's
That
next level.
I can be doing something here and at the same time say, hey, text him, I mean, it's like doing 2 things at one time.
Yeah. And I guess what I've heard people say is that Google and Siri and all those things, they're trying to become like Iron Man's Jarvis. If you've seen Iron Man, where he's like, hey, Jarvis, do this, or what's the weather, or make me coffee, where someone can basically be your assistant, where as you think of things, they can help do those things that have to get done, but maybe aren't the best use of your time or the highest revenue producing activity or whatever.
And what happens is you just get super inundated. Like, if they're like right now, and so for me, like, whatever your process is, no matter who's listening, you have a process in whatever you're doing. So you want to make it like, some realtors ask me, hey, what's the preferred way that you prefer to be referred? And I'm like, client, tell them to text me, email me, call me. All my bases are covered. Like, just whatever's easy for you, that's how I want you to refer me.
Awesome.
And so then on my end, it's your responsibility, or whoever's listening, it's your responsibility to make sure all those ways that you get business are super tight and super dialed in, so that your client doesn't feel that anything has dropped the ball, no matter how they come into you.
Right.
And so you got to cover all the bases. So
cool. Yeah, and I'll tell people that too, how I like referrals. And I personally prefer the group text introduction, because I check texts before I check emails or anything. And that way it's easier. They kind of hand off the client to me, and then I can say, okay, I'll message you on a separate text, and then we start the conversation. But awesome.
not everyone's going to come in that way, though.
That's
like,
true. That's true.
So you got to make sure that you've got tight
different things.
And I only started delegating my texts like that with this newest assistant that just started a couple months ago. And my prior one just didn't do that. We just never thought of it. But now that this one does it, she's like, she sets her phone timer 3 times a day to come in and take my phone. And it is so like cool. The happiest 3 times a day of my life. She's like, she's like, Señora, can I take your phone? I'm like, yeah, take it.
Do all that stuff for me. I need someone to do that. I just got this cat sleeping in the background, and yeah, I don't have anyone to help me just yet with that, but very cool. We actually got a comment from my friend Robert. He was asking, do you do professional loans like attorney or JD loans?
No, I don't. The places that are, check with like some of the regional banks, like BBVA, Regions. I think Cadence might be doing them. Those are portfolio lenders that are doing that, and those are usually the ones that are doing it.
Okay, cool. And I'll let him listen into this, or I can reply to him as well. I don't know if there's an easier way to do it, but I keep toggling between Zoom and Facebook to check and see what people are saying. But let's see. I'll just reply and say, no, she does not, but someone like you said, Cadence?
Yeah, like a BBVA or a Cadence, Regions. I think check with those folks.
We'll be able to help. Awesome. And so if anyone's listening now, feel free to drop questions. As I mentioned before, we'll be happy to answer those in real time. Otherwise, you can drop them in the comments afterwards, and I'll tag Jen and we'll get them sorted out. So,
hey, do you mind if I have something that I think some people might want to know about investment. So
yeah.
what we get a lot right now of people that are departing their primary. Like their primary now is becoming their first investment, which is a smart way to do it. That's a great way to accumulate property. However, on the next loan, so you cannot use departing residents' rental income on an FHA loan. So if your new loan is FHA, you cannot use the $1,500 a month to offset your payment on your residence that you're leaving. That's an FHA guideline. So it's really important. Yeah, it's really important.
So are they able to get another FHA loan? I forget how that works. Does that restart after a certain amount of time, or
no? You can only have one FHA loan at a time. So if your current loan is FHA, your new one has to be conventional. So if your new one is conventional, then yeah, you can use the rent on the departing residents. We just have to get proof of a lease, and a proof of security deposit before closing. And we can use that to offset the payment.
So if they were getting a new FHA loan, they couldn't do that if their current one's FHA. You can't have two at once.
You can't have two FHAs, but let's say your current one is conventional and your new one, so you can put a low down payment. You're like, hey, I want to get an FHA on the new one so I can do 3.5% down and get, a nice, low, sexy rate and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're going to FHA and you're leaving whatever your current one is, which has to be conventional or something else, or whatever, you can't use the rental income on that one to offset. Or let's say you own your house cash. We have people that own their house free and clear, and they want to use the $1,500 a month to offset tax and insurance and use rental income on the new one. They cannot do that if they're going to an FHA loan. So that's a reason, rather than memorizing a bunch of guidelines, just know it's so important for people to get with a lender so much sooner than later to talk through all those things, to know what's important, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of questions that I'll get that are really lender specific. So I usually tell my clients, like, that's definitely a lender question. I can check with them, or if you want to reach out to them, because all those details, I mean, that's why it's its own industry and its own job, because that's a very valuable part of what I do, is to work with someone who knows what they're talking about, like you, because I don't know all those details.
Yeah, it would be impossible for a realtor to memorize all that y'all have to know about contracts and everything else, and then also memorize all the lending stuff.
Oh, and I know it always changes, right? The rules and regulations.
Yeah. It is always, and sometimes I tell clients, I had someone stub me this morning about something, about whether I could use, she has a schedule on her tax return that depreciates the business use of her home. And she's like, can I use that to offset my income? Can I use that? She's self-employed. And I was like, you know what?
Maybe you can.
I got to call underwriting because, I also have just years of guidelines in my head. So I was like, you know what?
Right.
I got to check on that. I don't know the answer. So like, even me that does this every day, I still have to check on stuff because guidelines are changing.
I saw this funny meme the other day that was very relevant. It said, being a real estate agent is constantly replacing "I have absolutely no idea" with "let me check on that and get back to you."
That's cute. Yeah.
So it's like, true. Because I do that with so many clients. I mean, there's so many questions, and I'm sure you see this too. So many different variables and things that happen, and random questions that come in that you may not really have thought of or heard of, where you have to kind of reach out to someone who has been in the industry for a much longer time or is more up to date on the changes in the regulations, because you can't know it all. You just can't.
You can't know it all.
You just have to know who knows it so that you can get the right information.
That's
right. Which is also a valuable lesson for investors or people who want to invest, who are on here, who may not have made that first investment yet. Maybe they want to know it all before they do it, but you can't know it all, and things are always changing. So sometimes you just need to know enough and then pull the trigger, and you'll learn more through doing it than by just reading books.
Yeah.
Like me, I've learned more through real estate transactions and I had some great test subjects on my first transactions that they left me good reviews and everything went well. But there were times when I didn't really know what I was doing and I wasn't sure if I was marketing the property the right way, but I was doing the best I could. And people appreciate that you're at least trying to find the right answers, even if you don't know it all.
Yeah, that's true.
So let me see if there's any other questions. Nothing just yet. There's a few people that have joined. So welcome. Nancy, Robert, Cameron joined for a bit. Hans joined. Okay, cool. So what next? What's the next steps in terms of they want to get they get pre-qualified, they talk to you, or pre-approved rather?
They get pre-approved. So the next step is we do a letter. So we'll copy the agent with their permission. We'll copy the agent on the letter. We give them a whole write-up, their max, and then you go shopping. It's like
Awesome.
a carte blanche. It's like having a very large credit card in your pocket. So, we give them, my job is to give them the roof, the ceiling of what they can go for. And I'm like, this is your letter. You cannot go past this. So I usually give them a letter for the max. And then they go out and search for property. And then when you're putting in an offer, one thing that I think is super important, whether it's me or whatever lender you're using, let them call the listing agent that you're putting an offer in on to put in a good word. It right now in our busy market, at least here in Houston, it's super making a difference. Sometimes it doesn't, but when it does, it does. Like when it makes a difference, it really makes a difference. So just engage the lender. Something that we see sometimes, and that's, I see it as my responsibility and my fault when it does happen, is they'll be under contract and they'll be in an option period and I don't even know it. So like the
really
realtor
you,
didn't tell me, like no one told me there was a contract. So that means my follow-up needs to improve. So,
well, I guess because your process starts when they send you the contract, right? That's like the first step, I would imagine.
We refresh the process when we get the contract. So so a mistake that we see some buyer, and it's usually first-time home buyers, okay? So it won't be any of these seasoned investors, right? But a mistake that we see that is detrimental is the client doesn't know. They're like, I didn't know I was supposed to call you. And the realtor just got busy. And I've had it happen with some of my most seasoned realtors. They just think the client's engaging with us and they're not. I don't even know there's a contract. And I'm like,
and then a week into option.
The title company. Yeah. So we have to start engaging with the client like day 1, day 2 at the most, depending on when your close date is. Like I've got a contract on my desk right now. So this is like a hot potato. So I have to have action with this today to start getting through. We've got to start disclosures. That takes a couple of days. We've got to get refreshed documents. We've got to get updated pay stubs, bank statements, because it might have been 3 months since we pre-approved them. Let's see who this is. Oh, good. This guy is recent. But it really, if the inspections don't go, it doesn't matter. We'll be just that much ready for the next property.
Right.
So it's not time wasted. So that's the process: is get the pre-approval, look with the agent, make offers, engage the lender when you're making offers, just so that I have a heads up, because I kind of have a secret on the side hot list of like, these are the 5 people we need to watch today. We're going to get a contract any day from these people, or these are the listing agents I need to call today. So after you and I hang up, I have an address here and I'm going to do one of my love fairy dust calls to a listing agent so my client can get the house, I hope.
That helped a ton. Yeah. Cause I was having that issue with some clients that I sent over to you. And you've been doing an awesome job. That was like my trial. I was like, okay, let me see. I've heard great things, but of course, I hadn't really personally worked with you yet. And so they've had a great experience. You've been very on top of it. The weekly updates and everything are awesome. But we went 3 days in a row. I think you kind of, I was one of those agents who didn't tell you what we were doing. We weren't really looking at homes. And then we went hard that 1 week. We looked 3 days in a row. We were making offers on properties, but literally losing to these multiple offer situations. And then finally, I think on the 3rd or 4th time looking in spring, we came in above ask. It was a strong offer. They really loved the house, and you called the listing agent, which really helped to put in a good word. And they had multiple offers on that as well. We added a little love letter about the house, like little
It
picture.
all works.
It
Yeah, it
all
all
helped,
adds
and we
up.
got the contract accepted. So
That's awesome.
that should be closing here. I mean, we've got back-to-back closings set up on that, and that should be pretty awesome. And I think I may be out of town for one or two of them. Maybe we'll see. I wish I was here for the selfie at the closing table, but
It'll be perfect.
I can have your team
fine.
Photoshop me in because you have really good thumbnails on YouTube right now. Who does your thumbnails?
Yeah,
I'm curious. Is that someone in-house?
No, I have a virtual assistant in the Philippines who does all my
Awesome.
editing. And so what I did was I went, I got a photographer to take a bunch of different face shots because I needed to show more. I mean, some of them are kind of
Like
goofy.
YouTube,
I'm like, oh my
right.
God, I feel kind of embarrassed.
Those
like,
crack me up where you're like making a face.
Make it fun. Well, I'm hoping that it encourages people to like be like, people, you've got to drive to people's emotions. So I thought, well, I can't be always, and I'm usually kind of really, actually, I'm really super serious most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was fun for me to just take like an hour photo shoot with all those different faces. So now we have a library of it. So we do videos. Cool. I was doing videos, and no matter what business you're in, whoever's watching, like, just make it, like I did a 30-minute time slot right before this. And I said, okay, y'all have to tell me when it's 54 because I got to go get on with Chris. And so they're like, oh, you got to go. I was like, mic drop. I've done what I've done. I did 5 videos in, I don't know, 20 minutes. I'm done. And now we're going to upload them to my guy and he does his thing. And then every Tuesday morning at 7:30, we get on and he shows me 2 or 3 videos that he's edited. And I say, yep, no, change this, change that. I don't like the poop, whatever kind of stuff. He was putting a bunch of smoke in one video yesterday. I'm like, too much smoke, Raymond. I don't like that. It's too much. So we edit that. We have a good rhythm.
That's good. So yeah, I'm learning a lot about my processes because I have a personal assistant in the Philippines, someone who's editing my videos right now. It was so cool. I went and got a haircut the other day and an assistant scheduled it for me. I was like, hey, can you schedule a haircut before my trip? And she's like, does Sunday at 1:00 work? Yep. Added it to my calendar and everything.
It's amazing.
It was so cool.
It's amazing.
So just the power of leverage.
Man. You got to yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, okay. So people get the pre-approval, they go shopping, you put in a great word for them, we get something accepted. And then there's a bunch of things. I'm not really sure how that process looks because I know there's a lot of back and forth between you and the buyers at that point. So how does that next and last piece look?
So so like what I do is I call it a lot call. So the contract for me, when we print the contract, when we get a contract in email, for me, it's a signal to have a call with the client to talk about terms. So we agree on terms. Hey, you're going to be 30-year fix, this, that, and the other, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then my team starts rolling with it. So I start to pass off to the team internally. The way I work is I introduce the client to their contact. I have one guy that does Kenny, that does all the client contact. He's my paperwork guy. He's like a beast equivalent on paperwork. So he's got his lane and I introduce them, give him lots of honor and say, Kenny is your guy. He's your own personal concierge during this whole thing. And so, and then, we'll send them an updated link. Most people are tech savvy enough that we send this link to update pay stubs. We spend the first 3 to 4 days updating their stuff. They were pre-approved 3 months ago. Well, now that stuff is stale. Yeah. So we need new pay stubs and stuff. So everybody should expect the first week that you're under contract. This is what I tell clients. I'm like, listen, the first week is the hardest. Chris wants you to have inspections and he's poking at, he's texting you constantly. I'm texting you constantly to e-sign my disclosures and get me pay stubs. And then the title company is sending you emails because they have stuff that they want from you. So you've got all these people
that need
and
stuff.
you got to shop for, and you have to shop for homeowners insurance. So you got homeowners insurance people bogging you down. So these are 4 types of people.
Wow.
that are poking at your clients. And so I pep talk them, the first timers, especially on that call where I'm talking about the terms. I'm like, listen, the first week is the hardest. I just need you to stay focused. Like, I need your attention for these 7 days. And if you do all your homework and you respond to everybody and you're on top of your email,
that should be smooth sailing.
It's going to be smooth sailing after that. But I need the first week is going to be really hard. Like, you just tell them that, and then they expect it.
That's good.
And so that's pretty much what happens. I mean, if they get us everything in the beginning, they don't really need to do anything else after that. They just sit back and let us do all the behind the scenes work, honestly.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I forget how many things that happen because I'm the one just asking for the inspection. I mean, that's like my next step on my list. And I know that you have your list, and then the homeowner's insurance. I guess I forgot about all those other things that bombard them as well, and the title company. So
yes, they're all, I mean, their plate is full.
Yes.
Like they have, and then you need them to sign an amendment, and then, sign this amendment. We need to negotiate repairs. And then you got to let us know that you negotiated repairs. And then, so there's, lots of details that fly around.
Definitely.
But we just work together and it all gets done. It's all good.
And then basically they get the clear to close is what everyone's always waiting on, right? Once you hear clear to close.
Yeah, that's usually about a week before closing. These days it's a little bit tighter. Appraisals right now are taking about 3 weeks. So a 30-day closing, I have a couple that I'm worried about because the appraisal's due on the 25th and they're closing on the 31st. So what we do behind the scenes is we get everything done, of course, on the credit for the financing period and all that. So the client's smooth sailing, everything signed off on, ready to go, but we can't release documents without an appraisal. So the appraisal just slides into home at the last minute, literally. Like, it comes in a few days before, and we're just crossing our fingers that it meets value, and that there's no problems.
I just had a deal close on Monday that was kind of like that, where I knew, and I'd heard from our conversations on the book clubs and stuff that we do on Friday, that appraisals were taking, I think you said 2 weeks at that time. I guess now it's backed up even more.
Yeah, 3. Mm-hmm.
And so I had that in mind, and I was putting 40 days out, and then the seller countered and wanted it at 30. So I'm like, well, let's just do this and get it accepted, knowing full well that it's not going to happen. And we had to extend it by about a week again. So ultimately everyone was happy. I told her I wasn't trying to, drag her around or anything. I just told her that's what it is. The appraisers are behind, and I'm seeing this on multiple deals. And so we signed an amendment, and it wasn't a big deal, and everyone was happy. But 30 days is just really tight for sure.
It's getting a lot tighter, and I'm starting to just let agents know that really, if you want it to really go smooth and not be pressured and have me texting you daily, like,
I need this.
Are the inspections clear? Because we like to hold the appraisal when we can for inspections, but these days, because a lot of agents are like, hey, don't let the listing agent know that we ordered the appraisal. I'll lose negotiating power if they think we're too comfortable or whatever. And I get it, but it's like, if we don't get the appraisal in the queue to season and marinate, it takes time. Like, just because we order the appraisal today, they're probably not going out there for 10 days.
That's so true.
So, we got to get it ordered, so it's getting harder. Less than 30 days, I would say there's just no way.
Right.
But 35 to 40, I'm kind of asking agents when they can, I'm like, hey, let's do a 40-day contract. Cause it's really hard.
That makes sense.
Really hard.
Do you all use some kind of, I'm sure it's in your processes, but like a Gantt chart type thing? I worked in supply chain before, and I know, do you have something in Excel that says, based on the date that we're closing, by this day, we need to order the appraisal? Or
no, I have a human that does that. So Kenny, he gets a list every morning, and it's got the milestone dates there. And so he has a meeting every day with my, and he played baseball in college. And so and he was a pitcher. So he's used to Do I throw it to third? Do I throw it to first? So like
Oh,
his
good to know.
intuition is, I've there's rarely that I miss a closing for like for missing the deadlines. Like he's never missed a CD. Like he's amazing.
That's awesome.
So I particularly have a human, but I guess if I didn't have him, I would have to figure something out. But Gantt chart sounds good. I kind of have a human one.
A human one, yeah.
But he's looking every day. We get a report and we know when stuff has to be in based on the timeline for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
So for investors listening in, and again, the group is geared more towards those that are newer or haven't bought their first one yet. I mean, obviously, I'm a real estate agent. Like, I'd love if someone's wanting to buy a house, eventually they work with me. But we did cover all of the basic stuff for someone who's never quite gotten a loan before, up to the clear to close, and then the funding, which you just schedule a closing date and time at the title company. And then for a second property, is there a certain amount of time they need to wait, or if they're making enough money and have enough reserves, they can just start that process again?
The waiting is all going to be dependent on how they qualify. So
Okay.
when you haven't deducted it on so this is a little more complicated guideline. When we're closing property number one, we can use the rental income that's going to happen to offset that mortgage. But then when you're on the next property, we can't use rental property number one again until it's on a tax return. So it's like we're stacking the properties. We can use it at the time of purchase, but we can't use it after until it's on the tax return. So it's weird. So, but on the new property, on property number two, we can use that potential rental income to offset that payment. But then we have to count the full payment of number one. So it's like a lagging stacking of numbers. So acquiring too many properties in 1 year, if you don't make a ton of money, is a little bit hard. So we just run through it, with the client and just make sure we don't step in any potholes, for that. But usually they can acquire with a really good, strong salary. Like if you're buying $150,000 to $200,000 properties, which is what most investors are doing, and you make $12,000 or $13,000 a month in your day job, we can probably stack 3 properties without any problem before we start wigging out a little bit for that first year.
Okay.
Usually that helps a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Just so people have a ballpark idea of how are they close to that in income, or are they not quite making that yet? Because then they'll have an idea of whether or not they can expect to buy 3 houses in a year, or maybe just 1 or 2 or 1.5.
Yeah.
A tiny home maybe, and then a real home. So is there anything that we missed that's important or worth noting for particularly the investment crowd?
I do have a comment, and this is really putting a plug for just realtors in general. I've had not many, but I have transactions where investors, let's say, are trying to either sell without a realtor because they want to save on the commission, or even buy without a realtor because they have their license. They're like, okay, I've got my license. Why, I'll get a better deal if I go in and don't have a realtor representing me. Sometimes it works out, but a lot of times I can just tell you, like, the best investor transactions that we have are investors that realize the importance of having representation and not representing yourself, because it really just muddies the water so much. And it's I'm really just for the real estate community. I just think that, I've got some investors where they've got their license, but they don't list their own properties. They use a realtor that is their advocate, doing the work, does it for them. They're just signing the loan papers, and, they have a really great relationship, and that realtor is always hunting for properties for them to purchase. And then on the sales side, they represent them on the sale. When people are trying to represent themselves, or they don't have their license and they're just going to say, oh, I'm going to go get a better deal on this because I don't have a realtor. Well, that doesn't always happen because sellers are snakes. They want every single penny they can for themselves. I mean, let's face it. They're like, oh, bonus, no realtor. I only have to pay 3%. I'm going to pocket the extra 3% for myself.
Right.
So I'm just a very big proponent of using a realtor that's experienced, you know, that has done more than one transaction, right? That can represent me either on the buy or the sale. I've seen some situations get really bad when there's no realtor, and it's not fun for anybody.
That's good to know. For some reason, I had a listing recently, and there was the buyer didn't have a realtor, and so I guess sometimes they don't understand that. Yeah, they think they may get a better deal. Maybe that's what it was, but it actually ended up going very smoothly. But it was kind of weird because she would reach out to me to ask questions that if she had a realtor could have answered her. So I had to be clear, like, hey, I'm not representing you. I represent the seller, but I didn't want her to be like, you know, blind in the dark or whatever about everything. So I gave her bits and pieces of info, and she closed and everything went great. And it ended up working out because I gave the extra 3% that would have gone to the buyer's agent back to the seller so that we could accept that lower offer because he was having to come to closing with some money.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so everyone was happy.
Awesome.
It worked out well. But I guess I could see how things could go poorly.
I mean, you know, I'm really, if people are teetering on whether they should use a realtor or not, it's like, yes, you should. Like, they serve a purpose for sure.
Yes.
So I believe in everyone being represented, and those are the better transactions, smoother.
Right. Because it's a full-time job too, right? So many documents, and if someone's working full-time and they have their license and they're trying to do that, they're not responding ASAP like you have to keep the transaction moving towards closing. I mean, I'm sure your emails are crazy, but since I don't have help yet, it's awesome that I have a transaction coordinator. She does a lot for me, but there's a lot of little emails that are following up on different transactions. I mean, if I don't check my email for like 2 hours, I have 80 emails.
Yeah, it's too much.
Yeah. And they're all requiring some kind of action or a yes or a reply. And I need that, kind of like you said, Kenny does. I need to spend those 2 or 3 seconds like, who is this going to get delegated to? Do I do it? Do I delegate it? Do I delete it? Is it important? You want to make sure you have someone who's actually not deleting important things and replying to the important stuff too.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you some free coaching on the side to hire someone just to be in charge of your email and your calendar. Now that's
awesome. Yeah.
Super fun.
That would be great.
It can happen, Chris. When you get back from Colorado, it's going to happen.
I believe it. No, I know it can happen for sure. It's just such a paradigm shift to think like, no, that's personal. My email.
No. It's not. You just, my husband knows I don't text or email Jennifer anything quirky because it's going to get read, and it works out just fine. It's perfect.
Because he knows that it's going to be people in the office reading the texts and stuff.
Oh yeah, they look at everything, but you just set boundaries with everyone and they just know.
Good to know. Good to know. So I know we're nearing the end and you probably have other appointments lined up. Was there any last tips or takeaways you wanted to leave with those who are watching this?
No, just, I think just get your trusted team together, whether it's, realtor, lender, inspectors, as you're going through this, you're going to start to assemble your team. And it's super fun. I mean, real estate really is easy. It's easy to purchase a property if you've got the right team in place. So just trust your instinct, I mean, I think, if when you like somebody, they're going to go to bat for you and vice versa. So if you feel that something is not right, trust your instinct and look around or do it, like just start to assemble that team, and it can be a real fruitful career, real estate, for gobbling up your properties. It's fun. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jen. Where can our listeners go to learn more about you or to visit your website and all that? They can go to Loan with Jen, LOANWITHJEN, loanwithjen.com. All my social media handles, my website, everything is Loan with Jen. And check out my YouTube channel for my investor videos. Yes, those thumbnails do crack me up though, because I could see the faces for the photo shoot.
But that makes sense. No, that's so smart. I love that because I keep having custom thumbnails made out of each video, which is like whatever shirt I'm wearing that day. But if I just have a custom photo shoot, so you just pop my face in there in future
Yeah,
videos.
and we just have a whole library ready to go.
That's so cool. Okay. Well, thank you, Jen, so much for your time. Learned a
Yeah,
lot.
sure.
I mean, I still learned a lot, even though I've been doing this and all the little details and intricacies that you never really hear about until you're talking to a seasoned lender, let
Yeah,
alone a first time buyer. I mean, all this stuff they have no idea, and they shouldn't because it's not their job. So that's why they need professionals like us to help them out.
to
But
help them,
if anyone
help
needs some
guide them.
help, yeah, please comment below. We'll be happy to help you. I can tag Jen in the comments, or you can tag her, or visit loanwithjen.com. And thanks again, Jen. I'll send you the
Yeah,
recording once
thanks,
I
Chris.
export this.
Yeah, you got it. Yes, please do.
Awesome. Yeah, that way we can share in
Thank
our
you.
networks and on our pages.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay. Well, I hope you have a good day. Thank you once again. And I'm going to log off now.
Legacy Mutual Mortgage is an equal housing opportunity lender. The opinions expressed here do not reflect those of Legacy Mutual Mortgage.